I will share the screen, Bante, and with your permission, start.
Please.
Yeah. So after the meditation, we have the Dhamma study. And, we are learning the Majjhima Nikaya. Today we will study the Sutta number 5 from Majjhima Nikaya. And the name of the Sutta is Anangana Sutta, which means no blemishes or unblemished or no faults or flawless. It can be also called a person with no errors, no defects at all. So this Anangana, if we break this word, this Angana. Can you see this word Angana, Angana? In Pali or Hindi or Marathi, we call this Angan as Angan, which is the piece of the ground. It is an extension of the house, but not the house. House is mostly made up of bricks or wood or cement, but the piece of the ground which is extending, that is called Angan, which is dirt made up of mud. So in shorter version, we can say this: no dirt. Anangana would be no dirt or no blemishes. Different translators have used different word, but we get an idea of Anangana would be no blemishes, or the person who has no flaws at all is the pure one. This sutta's location is Savatthi in Jetwan at Anath Pindika's monastery. In the previous classes, we have seen the importance of Savatthi. Savatthi was a place where Buddha had spent his 25 years of his life after the enlightenment. And Anathapindak was the foremost lay disciple, and he donated the monastery which was built at Savatthi in Jetwan to Buddha and his Sangha, all the monks. So far, all the suttas that we have covered, all the suttas, the sermons and the discourses were given by the Buddha himself. But this Anangana Sutta is given by Venerable Sariputta, and he is addressing to the monks, all the monks who are present at Savatthi. Savatthi was a very big place. That Anathapindik monastery has so many monks there. And this conversation is between Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana. And they are also talking, this Venerable Sariputta is also giving sermon to all the monks present there. Venerable Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, actually they were the chief disciples of the Buddha, called as the right hand and the left hand. They were highly intellectual, and that ton of wisdom in them, because they were the Arhant. At the time they were addressing to the monks and giving sermon in the absence of Buddha. They were highly enlightened, and they had that capacity, that ability to address it to the monks. Even if Buddha is not there, they used to take care of the monks and solve the questions, answers, and also give the sermon. So I will tell you the Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana, a little bit story about them. This name, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, those names were given to them after they became the monk. But before, their name was Upatissa and Kolita. So Upatissa and Kolita were born on the same day in neighboring villages. Their parents were highly respected. Upatissa and Kolita also were very intellect, and they have a lot of wisdom at that time only, but not that much because they did not have the training. They were best friends, and after reaching adulthood, they have found no interest in worldly desires. They wanted to learn the real nature of life. Both best friends, born in different villages, but they both had the same goal, as to find the truth, the ultimate truth, the reality. They both left all the wealth because their parents were very, they had a lot of wealth in them, and they were very famous in their town because they were the chief of those towns. So they both left all the wealth, their family, and all the possessions, and they became ascetics, the wandering ascetics. They used to go to different teachers to learn their doctrine. And they took the training under different famous teachers of that time, but they did not find satisfactory answers. When they were still learning under a well-known teacher, his name was Sanjaya. They learned several things under him, but still they did not find the truth. So they kept on finding the path which is to will make them liberated. They both promised to each other that whoever find the answers first and understand the true meaning, the ultimate truth, that friend has to tell to come and tell the other friend that they will follow the same path. They will be guided by the particular teacher if they found someone, so they can be free from the suffering. So what happened and within that time frame, once Buddha was staying in Bamboo Grove Monastery, which was built by King Bimbisara. So Venerable Sariputta, whose name was Upatissa, he noticed another monk whose name was Venerable Asaji. He was going on the alms round, and he saw Venerable Asaji passing on the road. Venerable Asaji actually is one of the disciple and follower of the Buddha. He was one of the 5 monks to whom Buddha has given the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And he was highly attained at that time also, and he had a perfect knowledge and wisdom because he was studying under Buddha. Now he is going on the alms round, and one day Upatissa saw him. So at that time, monks used to go door to door in the villages, and they used to stand outside the door waiting for someone to give them food. Whatever they get the food, they used to eat that food. And there were people who gave food, but some of the people maybe they did not like or they did not have food, and they used to even use harsh words or rude speech. Instead of saying no, they used to say some not good words. But Venerable Asaji, even having those kind of experiences, he was so calm and so tranquil. All these rude words which were attacked with all those rude words, was not actually he was not unbalanced, but he was still tranquil and very calm with perfect conduct. When Upatissa saw, he was very impressed by the way and conduct that Venerable Asaji was behaving. He followed him, and he saw that he's still so calm and nothing is affecting him. So when he was done his alms round, he asked Venerable Asaji whether he can teach his teaching to him. And Venerable Asaji says that I am following Buddha's doctrine, I am following Buddha's teaching. Upatissa then thought for a while, if the disciple and the follower of Buddha is so accomplished in wisdom and know the truth and can explain the Dhamma so nicely, then imagine the teacher, the Buddha himself, must be so perfect in everything. If the student are this, how the teacher would be. The Buddha's doctrine must be so unique and so real that explains the teaching in such a beautiful way, the practice, the doctrine, which is never heard before. Then Upatissa becomes very confident that he found that one, the only one who can show him the right path to liberation. He becomes excited, and then he runs to his best friend Kolita, who is Venerable Mahamoggallana, and then he go to Buddha. From then, they both became monk. They attained that attainment actually, spiritual attainment, and they become arhant. And later, now they're helping several other monks to learn the Dhamma, which Buddha is teaching. And in the stories in the suttas, you will find that Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, we are the chief disciples of the Buddha. They helped several monks to become arhant with the help of Buddha also. So let's go on to the next slide. So Venerable Sariputta starts this sutta by saying to all the monks that there are 4 kinds of person found in this world. 4 kind of person exist in the world. So what for? The first type of person is a person who has a blemish. Blemish means we just saw that faults or the defects or difficulties, problems, all those negative things in us. So a person who has a blemish and does not understand that he has blemish in it. Other type of a person is a person who has blemish, but he understands that he has blemish in it. He has defects in him. Third type of person is one who has no blemish, but he also do not understand that he has no blemish in it. He's unaware of those blemishes, of not having blemishes in him. The fourth person is a person who has no blemish and he understands that he has no blemish at all. Venerable Sariputta is saying, of all these four kind of person, there comes two category, inferior person and a superior. So who is inferior? The person with the blemish. The person with defects is an inferior person. And the person who has no blemish is a superior person, is a better person. And the person who do not understand that he has a blemish in it, he is an inferior person. And the person who has no blemish at all and who also understands that he have no blemish is a superior person. So Venerable Mahamoggallana is asking to Venerable Sariputta that what is the reason, what is the cause, what is the condition that one person is said to be inferior and the other person is said to be superior. So Venerable Sariputta is saying, person who has a blemish and do not understand that he has a blemish, you can expect that that person would not generate any enthusiasm. He will not even try or rise up energy to give up that blemish. Since that person is not understanding that he has blemish in it, how would he even try to get rid of those blemish? How would he even try to eliminate or remove all those blemishes from himself? And there's a possibility that that person would die with greed, hate, delusion. That there's a possibility that person would die with blemishes, with a corrupted mind, with an impure mind, because that person is not understanding that he has blemishes in it and he's not taking any effort to get rid of it. So it's a possibility that he would die with those same kind of feelings, with the same corrupted mind. Now he's comparing in this entire sutta, they are giving the simile of the bronze dish, and they're comparing the blemishes of the mind and the conduct. So Venerable Sariputta is saying, suppose a bronze dish is bought from a shop and that is little bit of mud, dirt on stains, a little bit stains on that bronze dish. And the person who is purchasing that dish is not using it, not cleaning it, but still keeping it in a dirty place, in a not good place. So what happens to that place over time? Since that to begin with, that plate was dirty, that dish was dirty, and we are keeping it in the dirty place, not even cleaning it. So over time, that dish would get even dirtier, more stained. Likewise, a person who has blemish in him, who has defects in him, and he's not working to get rid of it. He's not cleaning his mind. Even he don't even know that he has blemish in it. So he will not even clean his mind. And since he will not clean his mind will be corrupted, just like the dish which is not cleaning at all. The Venerable Sariputta is saying then the other type of person now, the person who has a blemish and does understand it that he has a blemish, he has a defect in it, he's understanding it. You can expect that they will generate enthusiasm, make an effort, and rouse up energy to give up that blemish. And they will die without greed, hate, delusion, unblemished with an uncorrupted mind. So a Venerable Sariputta is saying a person who has a blemish or defects, now that person is knowing, oh, I have these kind of defects in me, and he will make an effort and he will try so hard to get rid of those defects. He will try to get to eliminate all those blemishes in him. So there's a possibility, still he's working on getting rid of those blemishes. There's a possibility that he would die without those blemishes. He will die with a pure mind, with a clean mind, with an uncorrupted mind. Just as a bronze dish is bought from the store, uh, even if it has dirt or stains to begin with, but the person who got it, the owner who got it, he's cleaning it every day and he's not keeping in a dirty place. Over time, that bronze dish will get cleaner and brighter, just like the mind of the person who knows that he has defects in him, the dirt and the stains on his mind, but is working on it to eliminate it. And once he eliminates his blemish, his mind will be cleaner and brighter. So Venerable Mahamoggallana is asking here to Venerable Sariputta that Venerable Sariputta here using blemish term. But what is blemish actually? Can you explain in detail and with examples? So here we have to understand that Venerable Mahamoggallana is also Arhan. He has so much of knowledge and wisdom in him that he knows all the answers, but still he is asking to Venerable Sariputta out of compassion, because there are so many monks there. They should also understand what Venerable Sariputta is trying to say with examples, so that they would be able to clean all those blemishes in their mind. So out of compassion, Venerable Mahamoggallana is asking, what is a blemish? Venerable Sariputta says, its blemish is a term for the spheres of bad, unskillful wishes. So whatever our wishes are, what the wishes? Unskillful and bad wishes. That is called as a blemish. Having blemish is not actually a problem. We are human beings and we are not born perfect. We may have so many blemishes in us, but that is okay. Having blemish is not a problem. But if we know that we have a blemish, then we should try to eliminate it. So the emphasis is it's okay to have blemish, but try to work on it and be a pure person, trying to remove all the blemishes from us. So he's giving the example of the monks. Since the audience is monk, Venerable Sariputta is looking at them, and he knows the audience are only monks. That's why he is adjusting according the audience, and all the examples are for the monk. But we can understand from it that the blemishes could be same. It could be for the monk, it could be for the lay person also. So Venerable Sariputta says, it's possible that some monk might wish that if I commit an offense, I hope the monks don't find out. Now Venerable Sariputta is saying that there's a monk. He entered into the Sangha. He's a new monk now, and he is committing an offense. And he's also hoping that other monks should not find out that he did some mistake. So actually, this particular monk is doing two mistakes. The first one, that he's thinking that he can commit an offense. That's the first offense. And the second offense is that if I do a comments, no other monk should be able to find out, because then he will be feel humiliated in front of other monks. So Venerable Sariputta is saying, if the monk is wishing that if I do something wrong, and I wish that other monks do not find out, but it's possible that other monks may find out that this monk has done a wrong thing or committed an offense. So thinking the other monks have found about my offense, so this particular monk will get angry, he will get upset, he'll get bitter, and that angerness and bitterness which is developed in him, they are called as blemishes. He's giving another example, that it's possible that some monk might wish, if I commit an offense, if I do something wrong, I hope the monks accuse me, but in private and not in the middle of the Sangha, not in front of the entire monk community. But it's possible that the monks do accuse him in the middle of the Sangha, in front of the monk community. So he developed angerness in him, bitterness in him. That angerness and that getting upset and that bitterness is a blemish. Another example Venerable Sariputta is giving, that it's possible that some monk might wish that if I commit an offense, or if I do something wrong, I hope or I wish I'm accused by an equal one, not someone who is not equal. In the monk community, they have the senior monk and the junior monk, depending on what year they became the monk, how much Vassa period they had attained. So based on that, they become senior and junior. Now this particular monk is thinking that if I do something wrong, I should be accused by a person who's equal to me. And if it might possible that someone who is not equal to him accuses him, so that again the feeling of angerness and bitterness might arise in him. So that angerness, bitterness is nothing but a blemish. Another example is giving that it's possible that some monk might wish, oh, I hope the teacher who is teaching to the monks today, he should ask me questions repeatedly, only to me and not to other monks, to show that how much he know. But it's possible that the teacher will teach the monks and ask the questions to the other monks, not this particular monk. So this monk might develop anger and bitterness in him, which is nothing but a blemish. Another example is that it's possible that some monk might wish, oh, I wish the monks will enter the village for the meal, putting me at the very front, not some other monk. When the monks go for the alms round, there's a tradition, and it's simply so nice to see that all those monks go in a single line. It's so serene and nice to see them without any noise, but they go so calmly in one line. And there's always one monk in the front, and everybody is at the back, but everybody is in the single line, not in the crowd or like this. But one monk is thinking that when I enter to the village for the alms round, I wish that I'll be in the front in case of the limelight and not other monk. So he's having those unskillful wishes in him. But it's possible that the monk will enter the village for the meal, putting some other monk at the front. So this particular monk who is having unskillful wish of to be in the front, he might develop angerness and bitterness in him, which is a type of blemish. Other example he's giving is, it's possible that some monk might wish, oh, I hope or I wish that I alone get the best seat, the best drink, and the best alms food, not other monk. When we invite monks to our house, there are several monks, like 10, 20, depending on how much we are inviting them. And then we arrange the seats for everybody to sit. And then sometimes we have little clothes or decorative clothes, and we put it on the seat where they are sitting. Some of the seats are very good. They look beautifully decorative. So this monk is wishing that may I get that best seat, may I get the best drink and the best food. But it's possible that some other monk might get that best seat, the front seat, the best drink, and the best food. So this monk might develop angerness and bitterness in him, which is a type of blemish. The other example Venerable Sariputta is giving, that it's possible that some monk might wish, I hope that I alone give the verses of gratitude after eating in the refectory, not some other monk. So for any ceremony where the monks go, where the group, all the monks, the community monks go, out of compassion, one of the monk gives the verses of gratitude and says thanks to all the lay followers who have offered them robes or food. So out of compassion for the lay followers, the monks give the verses of gratitude. But this monk is thinking that may I alone give the verse of gratitude and not other monk. So he's developing that unskillful wish in him. And if that wish is not fulfilled, then he develops angerness and bitterness in him. That is a type of blemish. Other example is, it's possible that some monk might wish, oh, I hope that I might teach the Dhamma to the monks, to the nuns, to the laymen, and to the laywomen in the monastery, not some other monk. But it's possible that some other monk teaches the Dhamma. They gave the Dhamma talk after in the monastery. If all the monks, nuns, and the lay followers, all the community is present there, and this monk is wishing that may I get the opportunity to give the Dhamma talk today, not other monk. Uh, for the respect, for the honor, expecting all those things, and since it quite possible that some other monk might get that opportunity, so this monk is developing angerness and bitterness in him, which is a type of blemish. Other example is, it's possible that some monk might wish, oh, I wish that the monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen will honor, respect, revere, and venerate me alone, not other monk. This is also unskillful wish, that he's expecting honor and respect only for himself, but not for others. But it's quite possible that the lay followers give respect to other monk and not this monk. So he will develop angerness or bitterness in him, which is a type of blemish. Other example, it's possible that some monk might wish, I hope I get the nicest robes, alms food, lodgings, medicine supplies for the sick, and not other monks. So in the Kathina, there's a ceremony every year called as Kathina ceremony, and we offered those robes, that shiver, to the different monks. So now this monk is wishing that may I get the nicest robes of all that, may I get the nicest lodgings. Lodging is a place where the monks live, the dwellings. He's wishing that may I get the best of all and not other monk. So he's having those unskillful wish, but it's quite possible that other monk might get the bestest robe of all that, and he would get the nice lodging and alms food. So this monk might get angry and bitter, and that angerness, that bitterness, that feeling of getting upset, the feeling of his wish not getting fulfilled, they are all blemishes. That's why Venerable Sariputta is saying blemish is a term for all these fears of bad wishes, unskillful wishes. Having wishes is not bad at all. We all wish for something, right? But wishing for good things is always good. But wishing for unskillful is not good, because if that unskillful wishes are not fulfilled, we might develop all those angerness and bitterness in ourselves. So here further now, Venerable Sariputta is explaining that suppose these spheres, whatever the examples, so many examples we have seen, all these spheres of bad, unskillful wishes are seen and heard to be not given by the monk. Even though they dwell in the wilderness, in remote lodgings, eat only alms food, wander indiscriminately for alms food, wear rag robes and wear shabby robes, their spiritual companions don't honor, respect, revere, and venerate them. Venerable Sariputta here is saying that suppose all those fears of bad and unskillful wishes, not the good wishes, if they are seen by a person and he's not giving up, he's not giving all those unskillful wishes, even that monk is still following very nicely and very strict discipline. If he's going in the forest for practice, he's not talking to anyone, he's in the seclusion, he's having only the alms food, which is whatever he get on his own, and he's wandering everywhere, not having any demands also, and he's wearing those rack robes, not the new robes. But that is of no use, because his mind is corrupted. He's not giving away his unskillful wishes, his bad wishes. Even he's staying in the forest following all those strict discipline, that is of no use, because he's not giving up his blemishes. So his here Venerable Sariputta, again in the entire sutta, they are comparing it the simile of the bronze dish, just to give it an idea. So Venerable Sariputta is saying, suppose a bronze dish that is bought from the store, and can you see this a photo, this alms bowl? It's so beautiful. It's filled with the gems. So outside this alms bowl is so beautiful, but they are saying this alms bowl is beautiful, but if someone puts in there the dead body of any animal and covers the lid with it, and if you take that bowl, this beautiful decorative bowl, if you take this in the marketplace, if someone sees at it and they say, wow, it's such a lovely alms bowl, I wonder what it is inside, and they open the lid of it, but they see the dead body of any animal, then they would be disgusted. The person who is hungry will also not want to eat the food after looking at what is inside. Forget about the people who have already eaten the food. So the simile is given by Venerable Sariputta, that outside the bowl is beautiful, but inside it really matters. We can compare it actually to ourselves also. Like we human beings, we wear beautiful clothes from outside, we put on cosmetics, we wear perfumes, we ladies even put makeup on ourselves to look beautiful. So we keeping our body, ourselves so beautiful from outside, but our mind, if it is corrupted, then it is of no use at all. It actually depends what is inside your mind. Even if you're beautiful from outside, will not make any sense if your mind is corrupted one, not a pure one, not a beautiful one. Now this other simile is for the other type of the people. So Venerable Sariputta is continuing now. Suppose these spheres of bad and unskillful wishes are seen and heard to be given by a mendicant. Mendicant means monk. So now he's telling that even all these bad skillful wishes, they are in the monk. But the monk is deciding, oh, I have all those unskillful wishes, not good wishes, all those bad unskillful wishes. I should be getting rid of that. I should remove all those unskillful wishes from me. So if that person also not staying in the forest, but staying in the village, in the town, in the big city, in the big monastery, and is also wearing the finest robes offered by the householders, by the lay followers like us, and they accepting the invitations to the meal, still that person would be respected, honored, and revered and venerated by his remaining monks, by his friend monks, because they know that even this monk has have blemishes in him. He's trying to get rid of all those blemishes. Now he is free of all those blemishes. He would be definitely respected, revered, and venerated. So Venerable Sariputta is again giving the example of the bronze dish, comparing it to the bronze dish, that if it is bought from the store and it is cleaned thoroughly, and if we are making wonderful, delicious, lovely, yummy food, and keeping it in the bowl and closing it with the lid, and if that beautiful bowl, which is beautiful from outside, decorative from outside, and they take it to the marketplace, and someone will open the lid and see that how lovely this bowl is from outside, let me see from inside, and they see this lovely yummy dishes, then that the person who is hungry will definitely want to eat it, and the person who is actually full but still he would say, wow, the food looks yummy, let me try even a single bite from it. So that's the example. And when we compare to ourselves, that's why they are saying that even you look beautiful from outside, let's focus, let's emphasize on how beautiful we would be from inside, like our mind, how beautiful it would be. So Venerable Mahamoggallana at the end of the sutta says, yes, Venerable Sariputta, that is so beautiful that you have explained. All those who leave home, the monks, they leave home, they leave their family, they became monk out of faith. They are not restless and they are not loose tongued, means they do not speak rudely, they do not speak harshly. They guard their sense doors, means all the six sense doors, they have control on them, and they eat in moderation, and they are aware of every blemishes, even if it arises in, they try to remove it. They care about the ascetic life, and they keenly respect the training. They follow the practice. They're energetic and they're determined. They are mindful and they have unified minds. They have the pure minds, uncorrupted mind, and they are the wisest of all. So, this is the end of the sutta, focusing on how beautiful your mind should be. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Archana, for the explanation.
Thank you, Archana.
Thank you.
Beautiful, yeah.
Thank you, Archana.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody has any questions? Check it there.
Yes, Bante, this is Jagdish. I have a question. In one of the sutta, there was a monk. He was frequently visiting to the bhikkhunis residence, right, where he was, where all these bhikkhunis were living. And when he was giving Dhamma, Dhamma's Buddha's teaching, and he was supposed to return to his, his residence, right, where all the bhikkhus were living. And even sometimes, right, he used to stay in the bhikkhunis residence. So most of the bhikkhus, they identified it, and they also informed Buddha about his behavior. And his behavior was again with the particular bhikkhunis. So I think I'm just correlating this particular this sutta with the behavior of that particular monk. I think his name was also, I'm not sure it starts with the Yam, right? Mogalika, but I don't know, right, whether the same. When the complaint came to Buddha and Buddha, can you explain, right, what was understanding, or what was the advice that was given to the monk, not to do this, which will, kind of break the rules of, Buddha Sanghas, right? Because that is why the Buddha, he decided to have two separate residence for the bhikkhus and bhikkhuni.
Yeah, there are there are 13 Sangha Adisesa, Sangha Adisesa, second, the highest, the apatti in Pali, or the offense. Sometimes we translate actually. One of the 13 rules is that even for monks, we cannot teach to a woman who is sitting alone by herself. It's a social situation at the time. It happens in India. It happened even now also. Sometimes people are so judgmental without knowing what is happening in the context. They usually judge first. If any monks teaching, let's say, on the park or even in the forest to any woman, then lay people usually has, the preconceived idea and then judge and make a gossiping stuff. And because of this not to happen to the Sangha, that's how the Buddha actually set up those rule stuff. Obviously, so one thing from this sutta is what I got impression is that I'm not sure whether Sariputra was talking from his own experience or no. My own experience, I mean, in the Sangha community, whether it's actually happening in the time of the Buddha or in his time, or in a place in the vihara where he was staying also. It could happen. And based on his experience, what he have seen, what he have senses, and he was telling to the Sangha also, not to have such a faulty stuff within the monks, individual monks. And the second thing is that the sutta begin, as usually every discourses begins with Ebam me sutta, thus I have heard. So that question arises for me, living out of my faith, but there are some critical questions also need to be asked, is that from whom whoever memorized this sutta have heard? From the Buddha or from the Sariputta or from Moggallana? Those are some interesting questions also need to be asked regarding, obviously the Ananda one probably recited in one of the first Buddhist council, but again, from whom the Venerable Ananda heard this sutta also, those questions has never raised also. Any other questions? I think let's see.
I think
Ajay.
Ajay have raised a hand. Please go ahead, Ajay.
Thank you, Bhante, for allowing me to ask my question. And Archana, that was really beautiful, very nice, very inspirational. So, Bhante, I am Ajay. I am from New York. I'm new to Buddhism. Don't know much, but basically I'm back home from India. So I know a little bit about Buddhism. So I understand like Buddhism developed a lot in India. What led to its decline?
Oh, okay. What led Buddhism decline in India?
Yeah, because there's very few, like people following Buddhism in India.
To my knowledge, I'm sure some people also have studied too. there are many, at least 3 or 4 reasons the Buddhism declined in India. The first, within the Sangha community, there happened to be disharmony, and that's how we have many Buddhist tradition communities also within the Buddhist tradition, and out of the Theravada that I belongs to, the Mahayana Buddhism in China, Japan, and Tibetan Buddhism, so on and so forth. So when there are some disagreement, there are disharmony within the monastic Sangha, and there are some Brahmins in the time of the Buddha who happen to be somehow have some kind of gross feelings of Buddhism or against Buddhism, because as you know, when Buddha started teaching his religion or Buddhism, many Brahmins, include all the kings, we know all the kings, there happened to be non-Buddhists before. Once they became a Buddhist, obviously all the donations goes to the Buddhist temple, Buddhist vihara, and suddenly the Brahmins are not getting any kinds of donation from that. So they have some kind of very, very strong reaction to this. They're losing all the wealth. And now suddenly when the Buddha passed away, the monks are fighting themselves, as the sutta is one of the example they're given by. There are monks who happen to be, not control their senses, develop certain greed, and so on and so forth. Then when we are fighting ourselves, we are, as a monks, as a group, and people who are against us, so they saw the weakness, so they started a kind of against, making their own teaching, attracting to the other people, non-Buddhists or Hindus at the time. And that's one of the cause of declining Buddhism. Also, there are assumption also that many Buddhist monks were killed by the Brahmins also, and also obviously by 13th, 14th century when the Muslim came, there are also destructions of Buddhism also, monks also killed by. Those are the political reason also. So it may take little longer time that we need to discuss also. Maybe in the future, I will probably give a talk on these issues also. So there is no single reason declines of Buddhism. On the other hand, if Buddhism based on one of the truth is called anitya, impermanent, I think it's a kind of Buddhism also goes with that everything's impermanent. So Buddhism kind of arose from India. It has to decline also somewhere also.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Thank you very much.
We'll come back maybe in next 1 or 2 months. I will prepare a talk, so I'll give a talk on these issues. On this subject. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any questions? If not, we can close the session today. Thank you for coming. Marcel, do you have questions? I'm sure something very new for you.
I was just curious. So if there was some type of transgression against another person, is there, like in the Christian tradition and the Catholic tradition, you have penances to make? So is there such a thing as a penance if you go against one of the precepts, or if you wrong someone else? Is there a formal type of penance that you do?
Yeah, we do. We do have. So we have over 200 of rules, regulations. And there's a degrees from the highest offense to the the lowest one. So degrees which offense, any rules that we break it. Every full moon day, so we monks, we gather one place called Sima. It's a kind of consecrated sacred space. So we go there, all the monks gather from different temples, and we acknowledge this. We call it apatti desana. Desana is the declarations, and apatti is offense. So for example, let's say today I came by train. Maybe I'm not supposed to do in traditional context, but I came, or I including there taking a car, etc. I'm not supposed to, and it's breaking one of the rules. Then usually on the full moon day, so I actually acknowledges my something, the weakness or something, one of the rules that I break it in front of the other members of the Sangha. So, but then it has nothing to do some kind of divinely or godly related to things that we kind of committed some kind of serious offenses. Then by asking for forgiveness, we will be forgiven. There's no such a thing. But for us, we kind of remind ourselves that this is my weaknesses out of ignorance, out of my greed, whatever emotion at the time. I happen to be subject to the human weakness. I break this rule. And from now on, I acknowledge this in front of the Sangha. I will not do it again.
Mhm.
That's how we do almost every month, once a month.
What about the lay people? Do they do the same or something similar?
That I don't know. Yeah, we can ask anyway. They usually come to the temple. They usually tell the monks to, yeah, if they're not supposed to drink, they drink, yeah, or other stuff. Rules are easily breakable. So
Or do they just live with their blemishes? I don't know.
yeah, they don't have much rule. They have only 5, or sometimes 8, sometimes 10. Depends on the and how they want to live by the rules. Yeah, not much. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you again for joining. It's a beautiful. Thank you, Archana, also putting all the effort. Yeah, it's a beautiful. I'm sure many things are kind of refreshing my mind. Also, things that I studied almost 25 years ago, and it could refresh my mind. And Archana, you prepare very good. Actually, it takes a lot of time. Reading simply the sutta, mean discourse. It's not that easy to understand, but when you kind of prepare yourself, then actually you have to put more extra time, extra energy, then you learn much more than simply reading the sutta also.
Yeah, that is true.
Rightly said, Bhante.
Yeah. And then, but this sutta is really something quite interesting to you. Have some little bit of story, so you can see you may think the monks are, kind of, different from you. I mean, the lay people, but there are many things going on inside the monastery also. Even back in the time of the Buddha also, how perhaps Sariputta have seen those things indirectly, kind of targeting other monks maybe in his time. At least in my imagination, how I read the suttas.
Yeah.
Living in a yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Archana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Bhante. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
also,
thank you.
go ahead, Abhijay.
No, I was saying like, thank you, Bhante, thank you, Archana. Awesome.
This is very good, and I'll see you next week, next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Same time.
Okay, same time. Yes. So this link is working. I mean the Zoom link. So this is the old one, a new one.
And this is the old one, Bhante, the same link which we use every time, Wednesday, Bhante. And
Okay.
we'll be using the same link next time also.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So-
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, everyone. Have a wonderful time. Take care. Bye.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Stay safe.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Good
Okay.
night.